You want to continuously deploy. You want to deploy faster. But there's two things in your way. The CAB, the Change Advisory Board, they want to slow you down, make sure everything's measured. And then there's technical debt, which makes everything slower. It's like walking through treacle when you're developing code. So today, I'm going to talk about how you can go faster, how we can defeat the CAB, and how we can reduce technical debt. Let's go. If you've got more questions like these, then come over to the Tech Answers Club and you can ask me there and our community. We're very welcoming, we're very friendly, and we can help each other out. So see you over there. So let's first talk about CAB. What is it? Well, it's the Change Advisory Board. At a certain level of an organization, they want to reduce the amount of disruption that IT gives the business. Because at best, if disruption occurs to the business, then their customers can't do what they need to do. They can't run their reports or they can't do anything else. At worst, you're working for an e-tailer, at which point something happening to production means that customers can't order stuff. This means you're turning money away, and the business really dislikes that. So the Change Advisory Board is there so that you can advise the rest of the business what you're changing, what its benefits going to be, and how it could go wrong, and how you can mitigate when it goes wrong. Awesome. But when we're doing continuous deployments, that kind of thing goes against the grain of that a little bit. So we need to demonstrate to the board, to the Change Advisory Board, that our changes are standard and they are routine, they are automated, and nothing goes wrong. Or if something does go wrong, we've got an automated fix straight away. Sounds easy, but how can we get there? So changing our code isn't easy. We've got several constraints pulling on us. We've got planned work, that's new features that we want to put into the code. We've got unplanned work, that's stuff like bugs and hot fixes. And so we can analyze what's going on by looking at our stats and therefore reduce the unplanned work, because we don't really want to be going back and fixing stuff that's already should be fixed. How can we analyze what's going on though? So from a DevOps perspective, we've got Dora to help us out. The DevOps research, and it's a thing set up by Google like ages ago, 10, 12 years ago, something like that. And they give us a bunch of statistics that we can measure in order to ascertain where we are, how fast we're going, how stable things are. And they do break down largely into two categories. One is throughput, how quickly we can get stuff done, and the other one is reliability. So let's first talk about throughput. It measures the velocity of changes being made, and we assess the throughput by doing mainly two measurements. The change lead time. So this is the amount of time it takes for code to be committed until it gets to production. How long does that period of time take? The shorter, the better. And the deployment frequency. This measures how often we deploy. Are we deploying once a day, once an hour, once a minute? Obviously, the quicker, the better. The more routine we can make these things, the more we can just keep running. After all, if you know a deployment's only going to take 5 minutes, fixing something with a hotfix and deploying that in 5 minutes is a relatively low stress task. If it all goes wrong, oh my god, a deployment's only going to take 5 minutes, we can then roll that back within 5 minutes. And so that is throughput. What about stability? So for stability, we got two main measures again. One is the change fail percentage. This is the amount of deployments that fail versus the amount of deployments that work expressed as a percentage. So if we do 100 deployments and one of those fails, our fail percentage is 1%. Again, lower the better. And failed deployment recovery time is very important, especially for CAB. That's how long it takes to recover to a known good state following a failed deployment. And this hopefully is measured in seconds, if not minutes. And if you're in big trouble, hours. And so this is all good in theory, but how do we implement this? So we can do two things. Those stats are quite easy. So for each application that you're deploying, you should have those 4 stats. It's not just 4 stats for the whole of everything. It's for every single component of your system you're deploying. If you've got a 3-tier application, web front end, a database, and a middle layer that connects the two, then you want 4 stats, the 2 stability and the 2 speed, referring to each one of those components. How stable is a database change? Stable is an API change or middleware change? How stable a front-end change? And you can track each one of those separately. You might have different teams working on each one of those things. So being able to track each one separately helps everyone know where they are. Great. So we've got the stats. How can we move the needle to make them better? And this is where we start talking about an unplanned work. As a quick refresher, planned is stuff that you want to do, and unplanned is stuff that you didn't plan on doing. Stuff like hot fixes, bug fixes, and interruptions from the business that you didn't really plan for. So what we can do is we can categorize the work as it comes in. That way we get another stat that says how much work that we wanted to do versus how much work we didn't want. And we can use that in order to get more staff with the appropriate skills in order to make us go faster, or do some other solution. The important thing is with these stats, we can make them visible, put them on a dashboard, and what gets tracked gets improved. We can see them. If the team can see them, then they can come up and share with you their own ideas about how to make the stats better. So the results, if we're tracking these stats, they should result in less unplanned work. This is work that we don't want to do anyway, and so that we can focus on the fun stuff, the planned work, stuff that we actually want to do. And as part of this, we also want to reduce technical debt. Technical debt is a thing where code has been implemented and it doesn't really work as it planned because it wasn't planned. Most technical debt isn't actually planned to be in the code. It's as a result of somebody doing the best work they could at the time in the time constraint that they had. But as the system grows, a bit like a bowl of spaghetti, that tiny little bit is no longer fit for purpose and it needs to be chopped out, recoded, or just rewritten in order to make everything else better. A good example of technical debt is where you've got a piece of code that needs to be touched every single time something changes in the code base. Maybe you've got a list somewhere in your code that's manually typed in, and every time you add something over here, you have to then go and update that list. That's an extra 5 seconds you're not going to get back. But now you know that list exists and the list is really long, you can probably come up with some code to automatically update that list when you add new functions in. And that's what I mean by rewriting it. So if we're reducing technical debt and we are reducing unplanned work, we should then see changes in our DORA stats as well. We want improved stability, less bugs, less tests failing, less deployments failing, and a reduction in deployment time. So let's go through some common pitfalls. Here's some common pitfalls that I'd love you to avoid. Setting metrics as the goal. If you make broad statements like every application must deploy multiple times today, chances are the teams will try and game those metrics, which is probably not the result you want. We want individual metrics for each application, and so that we can track things on it. Again, having one metric to rule them all is likely to shoot you in. If you try and measure a complex system with just one number, it's not going to work. People will work out how to reduce that number without making the real change that you're actually going for. Teams should identify multiple metrics that matter, including ones with a healthy amount of tension between them. Also be wary of industry standards blocking your progress. Some people will say, oh, well, in ITIL, you need to have a cab. Yeah, that's true, but don't use that as an excuse to say, we're not going to bother. Use that as a strength that you can work with. The cab is there to help keep business stability. You want business stability, you want to get paid. Therefore, work with it, don't act and use it as a shield. And lastly, making disparate comparisons. Yes, you might have lots of stats, but remember those stats are quite discrete in what they're measuring. A middleware piece of software, whilst it's still a piece of software, does act differently front end software. So that you can't really directly analyze the two and compare the two stats because they are different. You might even be using different programming languages for those two layers. Did I say that was the only one? Now I got some more for you. What about siloed ownership? Again, showing all 4 metrics across the deployment, operations, and release team fosters collaboration and shared ownership. The metrics don't belong to any particular team. Your teams are large enough, they should work together to reduce statistics. The deployment stats are the responsibility of the developers all the way through to the testers and the release. Everyone can have an impact. Try to avoid team competition. These stats are there so the business gets better and so that the deployments improve. They're not there for a team to go, oh, more bugs this week, or our unplanned work is lower than yours. That's not helpful. The reason for the stats is to make the whole business go faster, make that team go faster, one up on the team. And lastly, for real this time, measurement instead of improving. If it takes a lot of effort to come up with a measurement, then the focus should be spent on improving the stat, even though you don't know exactly what it is. For small organizations with limited time and limited budgets, you want the improvement, not necessarily knowing what that is. If you know something pretty intuitively, that if you do this, it's going to make something faster, but you don't know what the exact number is, don't worry about the exact number, make the improvement. Now, if you know that something's going to reduce deployment frequency from once every 2 weeks to once a week, just do it. And you know that the frequency is going to be, even if you don't know exactly what that frequency is. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for asking the questions on the forums at techanswers.club, and I'll sure see you soon in the next video. Till then, may all your deployments be smooth.